So my guest this morning is Kiana Cox. She is a modern-day Renaissance woman. Loved by Jesus, mother of 5, entrepreneur, founder, architect, strategist, I want to get my words straight here, strategist, solutionist, conversationalist, author and investor who is interesting, unapologetic, transparent, diverse, fun, energetic, stunning, a lover of people, resilient, a force to be reckoned with. She is a voice for the mentally, physically, and spiritually oppressed, lonely, forgotten, hurt, disenfranchised, hopeless, poor, outcast, displaced, imprisoned, misconceived, and the sick. Functioning as a bridge by assisting them in viewing life through a different lens by way of books, digital media, ministry, entertainment, fashion, arts, technology, products, education, and other invaluable resources. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Reading Circle microphones. Actually, she's been on the show years ago and she's now back. Kiana Cox. What was the initials again? It was Kiana. What were the 2 letters in the middle? KC Cox?
KC.
It was KC. That's what I thought. So you can hear me well?
I can hear you well.
Good.
I can hear me well.
I do. I hear you also. Now, as I said, listening audience, Kiana's calling out from Las Vegas. It is 3 hours behind us. So it's 7:04 here. It is 4:04 there. And I tell you all the time, because the show is broadcast all around the world and I deal with folks from all different time zones, in many instances, we have folks on the West Coast who are 3 hours behind us. And I am so appreciative of those who get up at that hour. Because, see, we think we're getting up. On the East Coast, Kiana, I get up at 4 to be on the air by 6. But that's because I'm the host of the show. But for my guests, that's not something they may or may not do every week. So I'm always appreciative that they take the time to rise that early to share with the listening audience. So how you been since the last time we talked?
Oh, man. Since the last that we talked.
It's been a lot of changes. Because if I recall, let me see, what year were you on? I have to go back in my history, but Kiana was on some years ago. And Kiana, this is my 21st year on the air. I've been on the air 21 years. Now, June would be 21 years. The show started in 2001. This is June 2022, so that would be 21 years. And somewhere within that 21-year time frame, you were my guest. And like I said on the phone, what we're going to do is we're going to walk our way up to where you are now, where it all began, and we're going to work our way up to where you are now with the Unpacking book that's going to be released or is released. I tell you what, as a language arts teacher, I love the way you used all those adjectives in your bio. I mean, I'm sitting there like, oh, you go, girl. Entrepreneur, founder, architect, strategist, solutionist, conversation. Just the fact that you found them, that's impressive.
I have people ask, what do you do? And I'm like, you know what? Here you go. It took me some time. It took a few years to get that together like that. Because before it was like, okay, it was just this, but then there's that, this, and then that. So, yeah.
But I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm reading it through. I mean, first of all, like I said, I'm impressed. I mean, just that you can string it like that. I mean, I'm fun, energetic, stunning, a lover of people, resilient, a force to be reckoned with, is the voice for the mentally, physically, and spiritually oppressed, lonely, forgotten, hurt, and on and on. Like, wow. Impressive. I love the way it's worded. Nice job. So, okay, let's go back to, all right, where did this begin in terms of writing? Or, I mean, is this, usually my first question is kind of like, where did this whole writing thing begin? Was that something that you were like really good at in school and like in grammar school, elementary school, high school, college, whatever? Where did the whole writing thing begin?
So the whole writing thing began when I was adolescent. I used to write my grandmother letters when I wanted something. Yeah, I would write her letters. So that's really kind of how it started. And then I thought, hey, I want to be a journalist. And so, yeah, I would write. And then I got away from writing as a teenager because I was involved in some other activities that made some I shouldn't have been involved in. The others was okay. But it really was I would have to say the early 2000s. I was going to say late 90s, but no, really it was the early 2000s. I had people who would mention to me, hey, you need to write a book, or they wanted to know about me, or they would say, they would think, they have this misconception of me that everything was just perfect for me and I hadn't gone through anything because I was a very private child. I had friends. My grandmother would say sneaky, but no, I was private. I was just a private person, and so I didn't share a lot with people. And so I would have never written anything. And I used to joke and say if I ever wrote a book, my family would buy it first because they wanted to know about me. Because, again, I didn't share with family. I didn't share things with friends. And fast forwarding, being in the fashion and entertainment industry, started off as a celebrity and fashion stylist, doing print, runways, again, celebrities, film, just very colorful background in the industry. And then I got more on behind the scenes. Well, fashion stylist is behind, but more on the production side of it, and started rewriting scripts for different producers. And that really kind of did some things, but then fast forwarding, I lost everything, a lot of trauma. There was a lot of deaths, close people. A really good friend of mine 1 year, my third son's dad the next year, my grandmother a few months after that on my dad's side, and then my dad 6 months after his mom passed away, he passed away. And so just a lot of things going on. I left California, went to Atlanta, where I thought, well, I was just going to escape from all the things because I just really didn't understand all that was going on, but ended up involved in a ministry out there. And then after 5 months, I left there and came back to California not knowing what was going on. I didn't have my signs for the first time, and so it was really kind of like, what do I do? So I took inventory of all the jobs that I've ever had. And it was more than my age. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. And that really put me on a pursuit of purpose. And in that, too, I started recognizing some of the things that I was doing, and I wanted to know why and where did that come from, why I was doing certain things. So that is really kind of how the writing started. I started unpacking the baggage that I had. And I had the first one, and I thought, oh, after that, oh, I'm good. That's what it was. Now I can move forward. Then another situation came up where, oh, no, here's something else. I had working on that, unpacked that, and it was something else. And it was just like these back-to-back, and I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. I said, you know what? There are people who have issues with the S, and then there are people who have issues with a Z because that's the last letter of the alphabet. And so I was like, I'm one of those who had issues with the Z, not knowing that I had them. A lot stem from childhood. And that really is where the title for my book number 5, Unpack Baggage, Getting to Know Kiana Cox from A to Z, came from.
Well, you know what? That is interesting in terms of, because we're going to work. I mean, you really did kind of work us through, because that's the latest title of your book. That's the latest book, correct?
Yes, that's the latest book. So I've written 5. The first 3, they're trilogies. 1, 2, and 3 is a trilogy. It actually started off as one book, which I had a publishing company interested in it some years ago. Was getting ready to sign the contract, and I just really felt like as though it wasn't ready. So then I ended up being presented to another publishing company who was interested. Now there are 3 books, and that's why it wasn't ready. I felt like I was putting too much content in one book. And this particular publishing company is one of the big five, and which I was excited about that. They had this marketing plan, 3-city tour, wherever I wanted to go. And we went about 5 months with that, and then I told them it's not ready. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no, it just wasn't the time to release those three. So I put those on the shelf. And then I ended up writing another book. Took me about 2.5, 3 weeks for that one, Why People Do What They Do, and It's Not What You Think. And so I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready to release this one. And then it just hasn't been time for that either, which I'm like, okay, I'm writing these books. Now this is 4, and I haven't released yet. And then 2 years ago, as soon as right before COVID hit, I actually started to do some rebranding, and I was starting to get my passion back for fashion, and I was going to launch a fashion brand. And then COVID hit. And so now, manufacturing production stopped. And so I'm like, okay, what do I do? And that's where I ended up writing Unpacked Baggage, Getting to Know Kiana Cox from A to Z. And that took about a week and a half to do that. And initially I was going to release it last year, but I was planning on doing an event for it. But again, due to COVID, there was a lot of restrictions. And so that was put on hold until further notice. But I'm back at the series, book number 5, Unpacked Baggage, Getting to Know Kiana Cox from A to Z, is will be more utilized for promotional. And my Live Rich series, which is the trilogy 1, 2, and 3, volumes 1, 2, and 3, that's back the focus and releasing those and really more focusing on those than the promo. Again, the Unpacked Baggage was more for people who would ask me about my life and what do I do and who am I, and it's not even a 5-minute conversation. So I was like, let me put it in a book. It's a very short read for each chapter. But yes, I had over 26 bags from A to Z, all the letters of the alphabet, of bags that I unpacked, and some of them, and that's not even exhaustive, some of them had more than one bag for the letter, but due to the content and purpose of the book, I only stuck with one.
That's interesting in terms of how you just now talked in terms of the way the concept of the book is baggage from and you have a different bag for each letter. That's interesting of itself. I want to go back, though, what you were saying about why people do what they do. What's the premise of that one?
Well, just in general, for the most part, in the world, things are formalized. And it's not a formula. So similar to Unpacked Baggage, these are conversations that I've had, whether it was personal, family, me being in the industry, and the names are fictitious for confidentiality purposes. But these are conversations that I've had with people because most people are not crazy. Something has happened as to why they did what they did. Just
Correct.
like with me, when I took inventory of the things that I was doing and why was I doing it and finding the root cause, it was like, okay, now I know why I did that. And until you find the root, you can't change it. However, everybody's process is different. So that is a disclaimer in the book as well, that this is the way that this is why this person did this. And so you can have two people who are going through similar situations, but the reason as to why they're doing it is a different reason. So you can't just say, okay, well, this person is on, drugs because they want to, or this person is on drugs And that may be the case. They decided to do that, or the decision that they decided to make for a certain reason. But then maybe someone else, could have been stress related or due to a loss of a loved one or someone a loss of a job. And so, the process and the solution is the journey to that solution, and the process is different. So I like to use the stimulus, for example. The government felt as though that those stimulus, giving everyone the same amount of money, would solve it, the issue. And it did, or it would help. It didn't. Everybody has a unique situation, and it needs to be customized according to that individual. So that's why the book is entitled Why People Do What They Do, and It's Not What You Think. Initially, it was Conversations with Kiana Cox, but I changed the title because it's really, really important for people to know, and it helps to prevent comparison. Because, I did it like this, so you need to do it like that. No, you did it like that, but if I couldn't do it like that, it may not work for me. So that's how.
Well, one of the things I can honestly and truly say from a professional standpoint and a personal standpoint of working with kids, as well as experiences I've had with my own family members, is you're absolutely right in terms of we cannot discount experiences and traumas that folks have gone through in terms of how that drives their behavior and their decision. There is a quote that says, when you finally learn that a person's behavior has more to do with their own internal struggle than you learn grace. And again, when you finally learn that a person's behavior has more to do with their own internal struggle, then you learn grace. So in other words, what happens is when something happens to us, what we do is we tend to personalize it. We tend to take everything, and don't get me wrong, when you're the target, it feels personal. But to be honest with you, it really is not about you. It's about what's going on the inside of the other person. So exactly what you said is just right. What may be driving you is not what's driving me. And we may wind up doing the same aberrant act or acting in that aberrant behavior, but it may not have the same drivers. Now, they were trauma, but it may be different types of trauma. And I've learned that dealing with, again, my family members as well as the kids that I work with in the school. When I heard you give your list of things that just happened, like one thing after another, there is a book that I'm reading now, and the title of it is Hope in Hard Places: How to Survive When Your World Feels Out of Control. And the author of the book is Sarah Beckman. Now, this is the person who wrote the introduction. This is what this person said. I've lived through my own dark places, and I've been privy to more tragic stories than I can ever recount to you. Cancer, death, incurable disease, physical and sexual abuse, divorce, aging parents, sick children, infidelity, mental illness, anxiety, depression, bankruptcy, natural disasters, and all the hard situations I haven't consolidated into a compact sentence in a book are wreaking havoc in people's lives each and every day. It's heartbreaking. The truth is, none of us are immune. We can't have enough faith, hope, belief, goodness, obedience, will, trust, confidence, fortitude, perseverance, or prayers to gain a hall pass from the storms of life. We will have hard places. Jesus guarantees it. Now, that was from the person who wrote the introduction. Now, the person who actually wrote the book, this is what she was going through, and very similar to you as to why I believe she wrote the book as well. Matter of fact, I have to go into the first chapter where she says that. Here we go. She says, as an adult, I lost my 44-year-old brother to a heart attack. Within 2 months, I lost a dog and miscarried my second pregnancy with a 1-year-old in tow. Whew! Those were some hard days, and I cried in the shower daily for several months. Fast forward to 11 weeks of bed rest while pregnant with my third child with a 4 and 2-year-old on the scene. Then 3 consecutive back surgeries and a gallbladder appendix removal within 3 years with 3 kids under the age of 8. During that time, my best friend Kelly was diagnosed with leukemia. My dad died. I had surgery for endometriosis and topped it all off with spinal fusion, my 4th back operation in just 6 years. This is what reminded me of you. She said, I call that our decade of hardship. And what you described sound like the same type of thing. And this is the last piece of it. She says, sadly, the list doesn't end there. From losing a best friend, a close neighbor, and a brother-in-law to cancer, confessing an emotional affair to my husband, relocating across the country with 3 young teenagers, and everything in between and since, life has not been a rose garden. So as I listened to you, my mind immediately went back to this Hope in Hard Places book. And so how does that now shape how you go about your daily activities and daily life?
Well, before I answer that question, that it actually started for me at 2. My mom was murdered with me present in the home. So the guy was someone she knew who murdered her. He stabbed her about 19 times, took a shower, and left. And I was there. He's still incarcerated. And about 2011-ish, he had a parole hearing. I don't remember my mom. I don't remember the situation. I don't recall anything there. And so he's had different parole hearings throughout the years, which I never went. I had my family members, like my sisters and my grandmother and other family members. They did attend. But because, as I said, there wasn't, I don't remember her, and I don't feel an attachment. Or I didn't feel an attachment to her. And it was a lot of unresolved, and I didn't have answers.
Absolutely.
My grandmother didn't really, her raising us, she didn't really speak to us about our mom. She suppressed it. We only knew that she had passed away and what happened, but we didn't know the details of it. It wasn't until I met my dad's mom, which I didn't meet my dad until I was 16. I didn't even know what he looked like. And my first and second son, their father introduced me to my own dad. I know some people are like, what? I've had people like, what? Say that again. My son's father introduced me to my father at 16 when I was pregnant with my first son. And so it wasn't until maybe 19, 20 when I met my dad's mom, and she was the first one to really tell me what happened to my mom. And so we had a family reunion after my dad passed away. I reunited, and some of my mom's friends were there. They knew who I was, but I didn't know who they were. And then I had reunited with my godmother, which I hadn't seen her since I was maybe 9 or 10. And so really sitting down with her, because that was my mom's best friend, and she had just left my mom before that situation happened. And so, there was just a lot of unanswered questions that now I'm getting the answers to. And I don't believe in coincidences, but the year that I reunited with my godmom and the family reunion, the guy was having, who murdered my mom, was having a parole hearing. So now I'm interested to see what he looked like and, again, why people do what they do. Because I used to be into astrology when I was a teenager. I was into the signs. Oh, yeah, if you're this sign, and, everyone act like this, until I discovered that that's not true, because everybody who's born in June does not act the same. And
correct.
December doesn't act the same. You have environment, learned behaviors, a whole bunch of things play roles in that. So where people don't act the same just because they're born on a certain, they could even be born on a certain day, the same day, and don't act the same. You can have identical twins who they don't act the same. And so, so it was just like discovering all of that and sitting down with the guys in a small room. Me and my two sisters, we were the only ones who went this time, and for him to explain from start to finish why he did it. And then they asked him about his background, his upbringing. And so he said that when he was about 7 or 8, his next door neighbor came and gave his sister some paint. She drank it and she died, and he was angry. He didn't tell anyone, but he knew at that age he was going to kill somebody. His mother was abusive. He used to get bullied in high school. He wasn't the most attractive, so he didn't have girlfriends. And so it was more of like a snap situation, because according to her friend and the people who knew my mom, they said that she was very vulnerable, and it was more of a revenge type thing against my dad. So, just very interesting to sit and hear him and why he did it, and them even doing a psychological test on him, saying that he would rape someone before he killed someone, because he had no priors except for like joyriding. And so it's just really, really interesting, again, why people do what they do. Here it is, that seed, that anger, resentment, that hatred that was planted in this 7, 8-year-old when that happened to his sister. And then he just, exploded on top of all the other things that happened to him in between.
I'm sitting here jaw open as you tell that, in terms of, first off, your mom being murdered. That's one. And then you had the actual opportunity to speak with the person who killed her. And they didn't
allow for us to speak. We couldn't even look at him. He couldn't look at us.
Oh, okay.
They told us no. Yeah, they're like, no. They must have seen some things happen, because, it was a very, very small room. My sisters, if they wanted to, they could have literally reached over and touched him. Like, that's how close we were in the room. And then on top of that, they asked him, because they wanted to know where was the little girl, which they were referencing to me while all of this stuff was going on. And then they asked him, did he think about harming me and doing something to me? He said yes, but he couldn't. And that really made me dig into this, why people do what they do, and how crazy, insane. It's very tragic. Horrific. But for someone to stab someone that many times,
right,
someone take a shower, but then here it is, I can't touch this baby. How? Again.
Well, I'm going to go back to your bio there, and the first thing you said after Renaissance Woman was loved by Jesus. So apparently, clearly, Jesus, God, Holy Spirit, whichever one you want to call it, all three had a hedge over you. They had some type of protection around you that stopped him.
Yes, and it's really interesting, because I grew up contrary to popular belief, but I didn't feel protected. I didn't feel like I had any protection. So, I got into a lot of fights, and predominantly with males, which was really interesting. But I didn't feel protected. But now, knowing now, as you just said, reminding that too, I've been protected then, like that.
Yeah, and if he was able to say that, yes, I did intend to do something to the baby too, but I couldn't, that means something intervened, something that we can't see intervene, which, just as you just said, loved by Jesus. But I'm sitting here listening to this, and like I said, my mouth is not closed yet as you've been talking, telling that part of the story, in terms of, oh my gosh, because this is where I'm going with this, and which makes sense now with the unpacking book. There are so many things that people go through that we can't see. We see people, hey, how you doing? Now, we really don't want to know the answer to that question, because somebody asks you, hey, Kiana, how you doing? And you go into that story, they're going to be like, oh, Lord, I'm sorry I asked. But we have no idea what folks have gone through what's on the inside of them, just like in his case. The whole thing with his sister dying from drinking that paint because of the neighbor is what now set him off for the rest of his days. There are so many things that people have gone through that set them off. And see, that's why that quote is so powerful, because most people do not give other people the benefit of the doubt of understanding that whatever they're doing to somebody else is because of what's going on inside of them. People automatically want to dismiss them. They automatically want to look at them as a bad person, or they're just being mean, or they're just being nasty, or they're just being this, that, and the other, not really taking into consideration, no, that's about what's going on inside of them. It's really not about you. Because what I just heard you say was, it wasn't about your mom. It was about what was going on inside of him.
Right.
And that's why the quote says, once we figure that out and truly understand that, that's when we really get an appreciation for what grace is all about. Because I've gone through, I'm just listening to your story and wonder, oh my God, how did Keyonna deal with that? How did she survive even to this minute as we're talking? How do you process that?
By the grace of God, speaking of grace, yes, it was definitely. I mean, I cannot take any credit for that. Glory to God, Jesus, for sure, was just protected me. Yeah, I've been protected. And when I encounter certain situations, even to be reminded of that, which helps to eliminate fear that tries to creep in during certain times, reminded that, hey, no, I've been protected. There's evidence of protection at 2 years old in that
Correct.
situation. Yeah.
No, I mean, I could sit there. I mean, literally, as you're telling the story, like I said, mouth open. But as you said that part about him not, because clearly he said, yes, he was going to. What I saw there as you were saying that was an angel got in between you all. An angel stepped in between him and you. And whatever that angel got to him and said, it turned, that caused him to leave. So there's no question, and I've been saying this, and I said it prior to you coming on the air, there is a spiritual realm, there's the natural realm, there's the supernatural, and there's the natural. There's the spiritual, and there's the physical. And the two do cross paths. I mean, that's what the Bible is all about. So when I hear you now as a live testimony that says at 2, even though, and understandably so, that you would have now these underlying issues of not feeling protected. That makes total psychological sense. And I'm not a psychologist, but it makes total sense of why you would be feeling that way. Just absolutely, that is something. Because see, for me, I just have this, I struggle with any time this feeling of being violated. This feeling of somebody snatching something from me or taking something from me. If anybody ever robbed my house, or if they stole something from me, or if they touch my personal items, or they just, that's a trigger for me. I struggle with that greatly. So I cannot, in my wildest, even though you were 2, the fact that you know the story, I can't in my wildest imagination know what I would be feeling like, knowing how I process feeling being violated. Because for me, that would be you took my mother away. Whether I knew her or not, you stole my mother away. You stole that from me. And I've had to deal with being violated over the course of my life in terms of folks taking things from me. So I know how I processed and reacted. You want to talk about baggage being unpacked. So let's go back to the ladies' book when you say A to Z. How did you determine what fell under each letter?
As I said, there were with multiple letters. I had several things that came up, and I'm like, okay, which one do I put in the book to kind of make it flow? Because this has been enough. It is like a flow down from A to Z. It's like almost like a story. The way that it flows and how it goes. But yeah, you mentioned, I had someone ask me last year when I shared that about my mom and dad. He was just, same thing, jaw dropping. kind of speechless. But then he said, I don't even know. Yeah, he was like, how did you handle that? Like, I grew up with both my mom and dad,
Right.
you know, in a nice neighborhood. And like, how did you deal with that? And, you know, and I told him, it depends. When I was younger, this is how I handled it. And then when I got to be an adult, I handled it this way. So when I was a teenager, I started drinking, here we go, alcohol when I was 12.
But
I was suppressing
right.
the things that I didn't know, and it was just all about fun and laughter, because, yeah, that was my thing. That was my escape, too, was to laugh. I still love comedy, but I was suppressing and really trying to, which I didn't know unawarely. I didn't know what I was doing back then, but trying to forget and get that out of my mind where
Correct.
it wasn't a focus. Because, again, I didn't know my dad. I didn't even know what he looked like. So there was a lot of unresolved issues and unanswered questions that no one was giving me the answer to. And because I was that private child, kind of isolated myself, had friends, but I didn't mind being alone.
But see, again, and I'm not a psychologist, but I do know enough about psychology, and I know enough about in terms of, you know, therapy and that kind of stuff. Everything that you're saying makes perfect sense. Even the being private, the wanting to be alone, and all that makes perfect sense based on what you went through. Now, the person that was sharing with you that was having the same response that I'm having, I was the same way. I had mom and dad in the house, so for the little Cosby family, what have you. So for us, it's like shocking. But I do have students in my school. Over the years that I've been a principal and a teacher, whose parents been murdered. Matter of fact, I have a student right now whose father was murdered. It happened last year. This past year, his father was shot down in the street. The young man is in the 5th or 6th grade, and he was kind of like you. He really didn't know him, so he didn't have like an attachment thing going on, but he still knows his father got murdered.
Right, and then there's still a void because, as I mentioned, at the parole hearing, the DA was pressing me to say some things. My sisters went, the oldest twin, I have twin sisters on my mom's side. My dad, that's a different story. Papa was a Rolling Stone. But
Understood.
Yeah, the oldest twin, she's very, and not to demean, because they were older than me, so they remember her. They were
Right.
5. So, and that could be a part of her. She's very dramatic and always have been. And that could be a part of it, the trauma and dramatic, because she was the one who was really attached to my grandmother. Like, she stayed up under her. Actually, they live together right now. Like, they're still
Right.
after all these years. But, yeah, she called him the boogeyman. Like, he had his head down all while she was talking. Like, he's going to stay in here as long as I'm alive. Like, she just went off. And, yeah, I'm afraid for my kids. And I have a client, because she's a social worker. I have a client who looks like him. I mean, like, she just went on. And then the other twin, she just took out pictures of the grandkids and just said, she didn't get the opportunity.
Correct. See, that's what I'm talking about in terms of violated or something stolen from. I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking to. And for listening audience, I told you in the topic, when we started talking, the objective of the show is to inspire, to educate, to entertain, to encourage. As you're listening to Keyonna talk, for whatever we think we're going through, listen to her. And listen to how she's gone through it. What I said, Keyonna, before you came on the air was, everyone is in one of 3 places. Either you're in a storm, coming out of a storm, or you're going into one. Now, clearly, we're listening to the various storms that you've gone through, and yet you're still able to share and talk about it, because that's my next question for you. As you now write these books, do you find that as a way of relief or release, or being a cathartic? Because I take my hat off to you for even being able to talk about it here on the air.
Yes, the books really, really helped. On top of prior to writing the book in 2010, 2011, when I went to Atlanta, I went and had a counseling session. It was only supposed to last an hour. It lasted 3 hours, and I did all the talking. This was the first person that I shared that much information with. Even close friends and family, I had never shared that, and that was really the first step of the healing for me. And so that's the reason why I can talk about it, is because I've healed in those situations. When you're still going through that process and you have the unanswered questions and answers, and not knowing what's going on and why did that happen and why didn't this happen, then that makes it a little more challenging to share with other people. So that definitely, and yet in the books, absolutely, for sure. That was another release. Because again, I hadn't even shared these things. There's a lot that my own family and friends will learn about me. Some friends I've had since high school.
Right.
They don't even know some of the things that's included in the book that they're going to find out for the first time. So yeah, I said, you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll be sad, you'll be, shocked, because there's a lot of different things. As I said, when people see me, just because I don't necessarily, I don't wear it, or I was the go-to person for people to get advice from, they feel like, oh, I don't, there was nothing that I've gone through. And I'm like, oh, you have no clue. And so that's what really inspired me to write the book. And yeah, definitely, it was a part of the healing process.
Well, first of all, I'm going back to the latest work, and I got to get a copy of that. The fact that it's A to Z, now we all know there are 26 letters in the alphabet, which means there's at minimum 26 bags.
Yes. I know. I did a national publicity summit last year, and there was over 78 media. And with some of them, not all did I pitch the story of my mom, but for those that I did, my media coach definitely was like, okay, you need to share that. And so, they were shocked. And these were like top ABC, NBC, you name it. And they were like shocked. And I'm like, do I pitch the other ones? Because, one of them, she was a part of a mental health magazine. And that just really took her aback. Within 40 seconds of me sharing about my mom and then my dad, and then also to my third son, his dad, which this is another situation. He was murdered right before my third son's 7th birthday on the same day that my mom was murdered, just different year.
Wow. So how do you, from your standpoint, how do you keep it mentally all together?
Oh, Jesus. So, when I was younger, again, it was I'm still young. When I was an adolescent, it was, again, the alcohol. I started drinking at 12. But then when I became an adult, it was Jesus. I really, my grandmother had us in Catholic school. I would go to church and ministries with my friends and things of that nature, and which was really interesting because my grandmother, she encouraged us to go, but she wouldn't go. She was still in that state of depression because that was her daughter who was
correct,
and she suppressed a lot too, and so she didn't want to see. She didn't want to go to a church because it's that. Okay, if God is really real, because she grew up in church.
Right.
If he's really real, why
did this happen? Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Go to the funeral or anything. It just was devastating to her. But she didn't discourage us from going to church, and she would actually send us with a neighbor or, somewhere. So I thought that was really interesting. And so it really was, she did that, train up a child in the way that it should go. And when they're older, they won't depart from it. So, yeah, as I said, in the meantime, in the in-between, I started drinking because that was an escape for me. But, again, as an adult, there was just some situations that occurred, and I was like, you know what, I just started going to church, and I was like, I have to, before I do something to somebody.
Correct.
Seriously. I was born and raised in Oakland, and it was just a lot of stuff going on around there.
You know what? Totally understood. But again, that is a testament of what God can do. And I totally, because there is no doubt about it. Folks ask that same question, like, God, why did you allow this to happen? God, if you really are, like, how could there be a God if this happened? Trust me, my father died a week before his 49th birthday of a massive heart attack, and my mom was mad at God, and we've been going to church all our days as well, but my mom was something hot at God, at the fact that he took her husband at that point. And I've gone through different life experiences, and every now and again I question as well. But at the same time, we, back to what you just said, really, this is what, someone told me one day was, God has all of the puzzle pieces and knows the entire puzzle. We only have a part of the puzzle, maybe a piece of it, but God has the entire puzzle. So he understands exactly how everything is supposed to work out in advance, where we don't. But that is the question we ask in terms of, well, if there is how could you have allowed this to happen to my child? How could you have allowed this to happen to my mother or my father or whatever? But I can understand where your grandmother was coming, and I can understand the comment you just made as well. Because, see, this is for folks who have not dealt with anybody who struggled with any type of mental illness or any type of traumas, they don't have the appreciation for it. As for those of us who have dealt with folks who have dealt with traumas and emotional issues and mental issues or what have you, there's a different appreciation you have, like anything else, when you've gone through it or you're with somebody who's going through it than if you're not. And so for those of you in the listening audience, I don't know if it's done for you what it's done for me, but I'm sitting here listening to Keyonna saying, well, if Keyonna can get through all that, I can get through what I'm going through.
Yes, by the grace of God, because honestly, there were days, I didn't even want to get out the bed because it was like, what is going on? Especially those back-to-back deaths, including my father. Yeah, my dad. It was, okay, I didn't meet him until I was 16, and then here it is at 29. He passed away. We only had these 13 years. I haven't gotten married yet. Your dad is supposed to walk you down the aisle. I was actually looking for him for a couple of months, and they wouldn't tell me where he was at. Everybody knew where he was at except for me. And so, yeah, it was just a lot of things that went on with that, too. I didn't attend his funeral. And I just was like, I remember him the last time and what I saw, and I just didn't want that memory of a casket with him. So yeah, no, it was definitely a lot. And as I said, I can't. When I was in Atlanta, and other things have happened then. That was 2011. I just really thought about it like, this is not even human.
Correct.
The things that I've gone through.
Correct.
Really, I wasn't going to cut my wrist or jump off a bridge, but I mentally, there was a thought, if it's my time to go, I have mental conversation with Jesus.
Right.
If it's my time to go, I'm ready, because this is too much.
Well, that's
I
you.
didn't know
That was my next question. I was going to ask you, like, well, what is it that? And I know the answer is the same answer: the grace of God, Jesus. But my thing is, well, what kept you from not taking yourself out? And you just answered it, because that was the question I was going to ask. Was what stopped you from taking you out based on all of that going? Because there are some folks that, and again, going back to your book, why people do what they do. A couple months ago, we had the young lady who was 30, who had been the beauty queen and was on Access and all these, and she jumped off a 60, 70-story building because in her mind, 30 was the end. So that's why, it's like once folks kind of get stuff caught up in their mind, if they don't get some kind of help or like you said, the grace of God, they will take themselves out. And that's why I was going to ask, well, what kept you from taking yourself? But you just answered the question. Because again, I'm sitting here and hopefully the listening audience is doing the same. It's saying, well, you know what? If Kiana can get through what she's gone through, then if God did that for her, God can do that for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's, as I said, can't take any credit for it because, again, there were many days where I was like, okay, beam me up, Jesus. Or Enoch. Yeah.
I know that's right. Listening audience, I hope you've been with me since 6, but certainly since 7. My guest this morning is Kiana K.C. Cox. And we're talking about her latest book. What is the exact title? Because I know it's Unpacking the Baggage A to Z. Getting to know Kiana Cox. Is that what it is?
Yes, it's Getting to Know Kiana Cox. Unpack Baggage, Getting to Know Kiana Cox from A to Z.
And you're saying there's some things in there even your family and friends are going to discover as they read it?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I never told anybody, one person, everything about me. So I may have told this one friend who doesn't know that other friend something, but I have yet nothing. But there are things that I didn't tell anyone in there, and this will be their first time finding out.
Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit before we come down to the end of the interview. I see and I love it in terms of the background saying trillionaire. So after all you've gone through, you still see yourself as a trillionaire. And I want you to talk to me a little bit about your entrepreneurship, being, in business, author, investor. Let's talk a little bit about that side.
Okay, so my grandfather, he actually created it's a part, the mirrors on the bus, which my grandmother said was stolen from him, but he was the one originally who created that. He had a educational institution because he was a carpenter, where he did more like a trade school in Oakland. And so my grandmother said that entrepreneur back me as an entrepreneur. That's where I got it from. Because even at an early age with fashion, as a designer, it was always something, what could I do to be on my own schedule that was flexible? I could wear whatever I want to work and make the money, do something that I love. And that's how it kind of came about with me being this entrepreneur. And while I'm thinking about it, the trillionaire, I would say a few years back, there was a prediction that, like, within 20 years or so, there are going to be 11 trillionaires. And I said, one of them is me.
I know that's right.
Always, like, the sky is not even the limit with me. I was exposed, which I did at an early age. It wasn't really not a person who taught me, but I was just always into high-end, just different, and not even financially, just rich things in general. And so, it's like the sky is not even the limit. I don't even see the sky as the limit because, scripture with God, all things are possible.
You are absolutely right. And in the beginning of the show, I always start my show reading off from 2 books. And one of the books I read from this morning is Unstoppable Faith, 31 Thoughts for Owning Your Portion, and the author is Joseph Prince. For today's reading is exactly what you're talking about. He said, God calls the things that are not as though they are, and he wants us to speak the same language of faith. He did not speak forth what he saw. He spoke forth what he wanted to see. And see, that's what you're doing with Trillionaire. Like right now, am I a trillionaire right now? No. Am I going to be? Yes.
Yes, and for the purpose, like some people they can't even fathom what that would look like, or what would you do with all that money? Oh, well, I've already sat down, and me and Jesus and
all right now,
the Holy Spirit, and some people with $1 million, they're like, oh, that's a lot of money. No, that is not enough to do what I've been called to do, even $1 billion. And so I've sat down over the years, which was a pastor had actually challenged that. Because he was believing for $10 million. And he said the Lord spoke to him and asked, what are you going to do with that $10 million? Well, see, at that time, I'm just believing for $10 million, what you think you would do. But a lot of people think of budget, like they want to talk about budgeting money, which the word budget is not in the Bible. It's management. People need to learn how to properly manage money, not necessarily budget, because I tell especially Christian people when I'm going to get that because it's cheaper. Yeah, maybe if you spent 10 cents more, it would have lasted a little longer. And I tell them also, too, that the heaven got streets of gold. If you're walking on gold there, heaven is not broke, and you have to trust that he'll do it. I mean, if you only have $10, he's not going to tell you to get something 12 because you have 10, but he can either give you favor to where it can be on sale, or when you get to the counter or something, someone comes to you, it's a discount. He can get things to you, not for what the retail or the asking price is for it, but that's another conversation when getting into that.
Well, speaking of that, I am enjoying this conversation and learning and getting so many insights from this conversation. I am definitely going to have you back so we can continue it. And that conversation that you were just talking about, we can have. Because, see, this conversation with you is even increasing my faith. And it's almost like I feel like God sent you and orchestrated this particular, because I'm like you, I don't believe in coincidences either. So I honestly believe God put this conversation with me this morning to continue to increase my faith. And for those of you in the listening audience, I honestly hope is doing the same thing for you, because this young lady has gone through a lot, and yet she's still pressing on, moving forward, has not quit, didn't take herself out, didn't take anybody else out. Even though then she didn't say she didn't think those things, because she did, but she had the wherewithal, and God helped her not to do those things. Because, see, we're humans. Let's get real. We are human beings, okay? And so these feelings that we have based on these experiences that we go through, they will conjure up certain thoughts and feelings. I know they do, because they've done with me. Yeah, in the natural, we want to get some get back. But the Bible says, no, pray for your enemies. In the natural, we say we want to do this. But the Bible says no. Because even in this situation that went on in Buffalo, I saw something on YouTube where they interviewed a deacon from one of the people that got killed was a deacon from the particular church that this deacon was from. And the commentator asked him, well, what do you think about it? He says, well, the Bible tells us we have to forgive. And he says, do you think the deacon who got killed, do you think he would have forgave? He said, well, I can't speak for him because he's gone, but I can tell you if he was alive, he'd have said, yes, forgive. But all of this that we're talking about is not doable in our human. Like Keyonna said, it is doable with God. It is doable with the Holy Spirit. It is doable with Jesus. It is because to be honest with you, that's the only way it's doable. Because in our human nature, we want to do something. We might want to take ourselves out. We might want to take somebody else out. But with you going with God, you don't. So I'll tell you what. We're down to the end of the interview, Kiana. I'm going to have you back so we can continue the discussion. But where is what I do for the last few minutes of the interview is I shut the mic off and allow you all to promote The only thing the guest can't say is like a dollar amount, but anything short of that, in terms of, I definitely need to understand your latest book. Is that available on Kindle?
Not yet. So
Not yet.
Initially, last year was going to do a release for that. It is edited, the book cover and everything. I had the website up for some time, but I took it down because there was there was a direction that I was going in last year where that was interrupted for a good reason. So what I didn't mention is I am 7 months pregnant with twins.
Oh, twins must run in your line.
Yeah, we have twins in every generation. So yeah, with boys, and so that was a surprise because my third son is 19. He'll be 20. My oldest is 23. 24. Excuse me. My oldest is 24. The second son is 23. So, I'm starting all over. And last year at this time, again, I was doing media. I was a part of the fashion brand. It was just a lot going on. And then I found out that I was pregnant in December. So that kind of shifted and
I am sure,
especially with twins.
Yeah, I am sure. So, well, congratulations. And in terms of, and God bless, in terms of now, but I mean, is the book out there? Can folks get it, or is it still in the process stage?
No, they can't get it yet.
Okay.
So I started to do pre-orders, but again, because of my trilogy, which is the focus, and I'm doing something different with that, more of a promo.
Okay.
Instead of selling it. Let me put that out there. Instead of selling that unpacked baggage, it's going to be utilized as more of a promo. So I took that down because the website was really, there was a lot of extras on top of the book that was going to be done. But as I said, I've had to pivot some things, kind of put some things on hold because, I definitely have to, now focus on getting some rest.
I know that's right. But
with twins is definitely different than being pregnant with singles, and or they call them singletons. There's just some different things that I'm doing right now that last year that I thought. So just to pivot in some of the business.
Well, I tell you what, whenever
LinkedIn.
Okay, so I don't know if we're connected on or not. We may or may not be, but if we're not, we will be before the day is out. I will send the invitation. I think we are, but just in case we're not, if we're not, I'll send the invitation. But I tell you what, no question, when the 26 bags or the unpacking the 26 or whatever, when that book comes out, I want to read that, whether it's promo or whether it's book or not. I want to read that one. I can tell you that right off the bat, and I have thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you, and you've encouraged me, and I hope you've encouraged the audience as well. I'm going to go back because I love the way that, and now the way the bio is written makes total sense to me as to why you were able to pick those adjectives. I'm going to read that as we close out. And again, I'm going to invite you back. Now, let me see. I started sending out my various emails, and I think that's how, you picked up that I was still on the air, because you would email me back like, wow, are you still on? Do you remember me?
Yeah.
So I send my emails out and, promoing the show and everything. And I would definitely get this one up and on the YouTube, because I archive my shows on the YouTube. Probably your other one is still there too. But I archive them on my YouTube. Folks can listen to them who didn't rise early with us this morning. I'll probably get that out before the end of the day, or certainly before the end of the weekend. But I'll put it this way, particularly since you're expecting the twins. I'm going to pray for you and you pray for me. And I'm looking forward to seeing you become that trillionaire. And as a matter of fact, that's a wonderful leader. I'm going to read her. I'm going to end with her bio, because I was impressed and love this bio so much. I usually start with it, but I'm going to end with this one. Kiana Cox, modern-day Renaissance woman, loved by Jesus, mother of 5. Oh, that's soon to be 7.
No, that's why it's 5.
That's why it's 5 now. So it's 3 and the 2 would be 5. Okay, that'll make it mother. All right, and speaking it again as if it's something, because they're here. Mother of 5, entrepreneur, founder, architect, strategist, solutionist, Conversationalist, author and investor who is interesting, unapologetic, transparent, diverse, fun, energetic, stunning, a lover of people, resilient, for sure. A force to be reckoned with, for sure. She is a voice for the mentally, physically, and spiritually oppressed, lonely, forgotten, hurt, disenfranchised, hopeless, poor, outcast, displaced, imprisoned, misconceived, and the sick, functioning as a bridge by assisting them in viewing life through a different lens by way of books, digital media, ministry, entertainment, fashion, arts, technology, products, education, and other invaluable resources. Amen. Ashe. So, Kiana, thank you so much for rising early with me this morning. It is like 5:08 your time, 8:08 my time. So I appreciate you. God bless you. And I will be in touch with you.
Thanks for having me, and bless you too.
All right.
Have a good one.
You too. I'll get the links out to you before the weekend is out.
Okay, great.
All right. Take care.